Week two of the semester. We're already flying by here. So 5 week semester. This week we will focus in on swimming. Swimming is the first segment of a triathlon. And although it is the shortest distance or shortest time that usually consists of a triathlon, it's really critically important to understand swimming in order to get successfully to the bike and then to the run. A lot of times you're hear me talk about in any of our podcasts where we talk about swim fitness. A lot of times we want to be fit enough so that it does not negatively, so the swim segment does not negatively influence our bike or our run. And a lot of people who take up triathlon later in life, uh, as an adult, they may not have a swimming background and they may need to really spend some time on swimming. And initially, they may see some big gains in their swim performance because their swim technique is not very good in the beginning, and then they can make big jumps. But at some point, you reach a threshold where the amount of time necessary to improve in swimming does not equate to the amount of time that you improve. And so now, as a triathlete, you need to make decisions where to spend hours in the day, hours in the week, where you're going to put that time in for training. And because swimming tends to be the shortest segment in terms of time of a triathlon, uh, athletes will spend more time biking and running. But it's still so critical to understand what's going on in swimming in order to have a successful triathlon. So we'll spend a whole week on swimming. Uh, Now, I do put in a video here on open water swimming because open water swimming is different than pool swimming. And the vast majority of triathlons are done in open water, whether that be in the ocean or lake or sometimes even a river. And it is important to have an understanding of open water swim technique and how that may be different than swimming in a pool. In a pool, obviously, you've got a black line on the bottom of the pool. You've got a specific distance that you're swimming each length, 25 yards, 25 meters, 50 meters, whatever it is. And you've got lane lines there to manage the waves and so forth. And you're usually swimming one athlete at a time in the same direction. In a triathlon, it can get pretty chaotic. You don't have any line to follow at the bottom of the lake. Well, unless you're doing Lake Placid, and there's actually a guide there that they actually use for crew for rowing, but that's more by chance as opposed to by design. But in general, you don't have any markings to follow. You're often swimming following the sun, and you've got to deal with being able to sight and swim as straight as possible to the right location. So there's a lot of technique that happens. And you've got to deal with waves, wind, you've got to deal with bumping into other people and so forth. So watching this open water swim start may give you a little bit of sense of what it's like to be in a triathlon. And I'll tell you, a lot of new triathletes are usually very anxious about the swim start. And we spend a lot of time even going down the lake and practicing swimming with other people around you. It is quite different than a pool swim. All right, so now I'm going to get into swimming kinetics. And really, the key with our kinetic analysis is you're always going to identify the forces acting on, in this case, the athlete. And we've got some forces acting on the athlete that are really important to understand. Buoyancy force, and I'll go through that force. That's a force that's an upward directed force that lifts the swimmer upwards, and then drag force. And this drag force is really important, not only for swimming, but we're also going to use it a lot in cycling and a little bit in running. It shows up in each of our kinetic analyses, but more so swimming because the fluid that you're trying to move through is extremely dense. Water is 800 times more dense than air. And so any resistance force due to a drag force is really important to understand in swimming, and how do you reduce that resistance drag force. Well, what we'll also discover is drag force can also be a propulsion force, and that's what allows you to swim forward. And I'll go through that information within these videos. I'll also go through how drag force is measured and therefore how propulsion force is measured. I'll go through an experiment on quantifying buoyancy force. So I'll go through the math behind buoyancy, but then I'll also show you practically how to actually calculate it or measure it. And then I go through these immersion videos where I talk about, I go through a video on the measurements of drag force and how one company, Hoob Design, actually measures things during swimming, and they use that information to help make decisions on wetsuit design and swim skin design and kit design in general. I talk about wetsuit selection in a video. I did that mostly for some triathletes who are asking about wetsuit design. So I go through some information there, again, practical information. And then I have an interview with Dean Jackson, the owner of Hoob Design. I've known Dean for some time, and he's a very big innovator in the swimming industry and cycling now as well. And it's sort of fun talking to him. And then I have a video with Hoob Toussaint. Hoob is actually a co-owner of Hoob Design, and that company is named after him in that case. So nice guy that has done a lot of research on swimming kinetics. And if your semester project involves swimming, you're going to definitely want to search Hoob Toussaint for any research that he's done. And then the semester project assignments, you have 4 of them this week. This week you are going to identify your question, and I've got some information on that. And hopefully at this point you'll be narrowing it down to one question. Then I have you go and find some anecdotal information, mostly by looking at websites. Could be a podcast as well, or something that is not empirically presented. And then terminology, you're going to pick those terms for your project, and you're going to find your first research paper. So I go through all that information for each of the semester project assignments. And again, these assignments are designed to try to help you build this project along the way. Okay, that's it for week 2. Thank you.